The influencer economy, how authenticity became a product. By 2023, Instagram had become the single largest platform where businesses spend advertising money on influencer marketing. Yet nobody can actually define what an influencer is. Not the academic researchers. Not the platforms themselves. Not the Federal Trade Commission. And that's not a minor problem, that's the foundation of a $50 billion industry built on quicksand. This is the autopsy of how we outsourced our purchasing decisions to strangers on the internet, and why that decision is quietly collapsing. The story starts in 1664. That's when the word influencer first appeared in Henry More's theological text, referring to someone who shapes the behavior of others through authority or position. For 3 centuries, influencers were kings, priests, generals. Then social media changed the math. Around 2010, platforms like Instagram and TikTok discovered something revolutionary about human attention. People didn't want celebrities anymore. They wanted authenticity. They wanted someone like them, but with better lighting and more followers. Instagram launched in October 2010 with a simple premise: a camera, a filter, a grid. By 2012, it had 1 million users. By 2014, 200 million. The algorithm began rewarding consistency, engagement, relatability. The business model arrived quietly. In 2015, brands realized these accounts, these influencers, could move products. A fashion brand could pay someone with 100,000 followers to post a photo wearing their jeans. The audience saw it not as an ad, but as a friend's recommendation. No disclaimer needed. No FTC oversight. Just organic-looking authenticity sold for a fee. The economics were undeniable. Research showed that a 1% increase in spending on influencer marketing led to a 0.5% increase in audience engagement. For brands, this was cheaper than traditional advertising. By 2020, influencer marketing became a formal career. By 2023, it was a $50 billion industry. Instagram was the primary battleground, the platform where businesses spend the most money on influencer deals. But here's what nobody was tracking: the definition of influencer was never locked down. One writer defined them as third parties who exercise influence over organizations and customers. Another said they were third parties who shape purchasing decisions but may never be accountable for it. A third group categorized them by type: connected influencers with large networks. Authoritative influencers who were trusted. Trendsetters who adopted new products early. Activists who mobilized communities. The problem: just because someone has many followers does not mean they have much influence over those followers. The metrics were lies. Follower counts could be bought. Engagement could be faked. Authenticity could be performed. Here's the real story that changes how you read the influencer economy. The entire system was built on a category error. In 2010, when Instagram launched, the word influencer still meant what it meant in 1664, someone with legitimate authority or expertise. A doctor influencing health decisions. A scientist influencing policy. A general influencing strategy. But the social media version had none of this. It had follower counts. That's it. What happened was this: brands needed a way to sell products without looking like they were selling products. The FTC required disclosures for paid endorsements, the word ad or had to appear. But the whole appeal of influencer marketing was that it didn't feel like an ad. It felt like a friend's genuine recommendation. So the entire industry built itself on a lie it had to legally disclose. The posts were authentic-looking performances. The followers were often partially purchased. The engagement was sometimes artificially inflated. The influence was influence only in the direction brands wanted it to point. And here's the detail nobody talks about: the influencers themselves had no accountability. If a product was dangerous, if a claim was false, if an audience was manipulated, the influencer had no legal responsibility. They were just the messenger. Brands were the client. Platforms were neutral. The FTC enforcement was underfunded. The consumer was the only party with no seat at the table. By 2023, the system had become so sophisticated that the distinction between authentic content and sponsored content had effectively disappeared. An influencer's entire persona, their taste, their values, their lifestyle, was a product they were selling. Not just to followers, but to brands. The authenticity that made influencers valuable in the first place was the very thing that got monetized out of existence. The lesson here extends beyond social media. When you build an economy on a concept that can't be defined, you've built it on trust. And trust, once packaged and sold, stops being trust. Influencers didn't fail. The industry succeeded. That's the problem. It succeeded so well at manufacturing authenticity that authentic influence became impossible to find.